Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
Hello, welcome to the Alldus podcast. As part of our AI in Action series, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Madhav Khurana. Madhav is the head of data scientist at rebuy. Madhav, great to have you on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here. I'm looking forward to the next few minutes talking about data science.
So tell us a little bit about your journey to now, how you got into the world of data science, if we start us off.
I'm actually coming from a small town in India called Jalandhar. And I grew up in a typical Indian middle class family where studies is the only thing you are allowed to do. And in India, we have a saying that you become an engineer and then you decide what you want to do with your life. And that's what I did. I graduated in 2012 with Bachelor of Engineering in Electronics and Electrical Engineering from actually one of the premier institutes of India called BITS Pilani. And I actually did reasonably well there, but was never quite interested in electronics. Neither was I much good in it. And the only thing I was interested in was mathematics. So I applied for a few business analytics roles because data scientist as a term didn't really exist that prominently across the industry. And I managed to actually get the attention of one company. But after the HR round, I was rejected saying that I don't have necessary experience, which is fair. But I still kept pressing. I somehow got in touch with the hiring manager and asked him to give me a chance. And I met him, and he gave me 3 questions in probability and statistics and gave me an hour to solve them and said, okay, I'm giving you these 3 questions, you solve them. And if you solve them, then we can have a conversation. And he left the room. I actually managed to solve that in, I think, 10 minutes, which impressed him. And I got the job. And since then, whatever I learned has been on the job. I've done a couple of courses on Coursera, but most of what I have been while trying to solve a problem and work. So that was IMI Mobile, which is a telecom services provider. And I worked as a data science consultant there, helping the telecom companies with their telecom strategies, data strategies, customer relationship management, and anything related to data in telecom industry. From there, that was in London. And from London, I moved to Stockholm to work at King, which makes Candy Crush. So I was basically looking at making sure that people remain addicted to Candy Crush game. And I created algorithms for the dynamic difficulty, looking at the monetization of the game. And then I also looked at a few other Candy Crush games. There are 4 or 5 of them now. And from there, from Stockholm, I moved to Berlin to work at Careem, which is a part of Uber right now. And at Careem, I was working at marketplace, looking at how the pricing should be, which customer should get which driver, and basically everything from the marketplace. And from there, I moved to rebuy, where I'm currently the head of data science. And I've been here working at rebuy for around 1.5 years now.
A very varied career. I loved your persistence at that as well. And in this field, more than any, you're constantly learning and evolving, and anywhere you can get new information and applied experience is always welcome. Tell us a little bit about rebuy for people who don't know much about it.
So rebuy is sort of a pioneer in the re-commerce industry. And re-commerce industry, not a lot of people know about this. It's a marketplace for used goods. But then you talk about that and people get confused with eBay. It is like eBay, just better, I would say, because customers sell the products to us. We grade the items, and then we sell these products with a guarantee on the quality of the item. Right now, people go on eBay and they don't want to sell it because they don't want to deal with multiple customers asking them for a price, and they have to give that product or whatever. And the same goes for buying, that you're not sure what quality of the product you're buying from someone. So we get rid of all of that. There's a guarantee of 3 whole years that whatever you buy from rebuy, we guarantee that this product will stay with you for 3 years. And we're actually following the purpose to reduce resources and sensitivize our society for a conscious consumption. There's so much electronic waste these days, and it's so easy to not buy new products and just use unused products because they work as well. And as a company, we are active in 7 countries: Germany, Austria, Netherlands, France, Italy, Spain, and the UK. And we are actually 550 employees of 28 nations. So you can imagine how diverse we are. And in terms of looking at perspectives, and we are all very motivated people and very sustainable in our approach to solving the problems.
I love how you're so focused on just solving that problem, because there is so much wastage out there. Tell us how you actually leverage data science, machine learning.
Yeah, they're actually very the classic use cases I can tell you about, which you will find even in e-commerce companies, and that is forecasting the sales and purchases, which is very important when we're looking at category managers, and they need to understand that they have enough supply to match the demand. And it is very tricky here because purchases, we have to match the purchases and sales, and there are so many different heuristics you have to look at with this e-commerce industry. And that's another big problem we work with, and it's actually one of the most challenging, is pricing. And with pricing, how we price on the purchase side and the selling side. Then there's also these use cases of optimizing customer experience by testing how what works better for the customer, what doesn't. Then we have recommender systems. That's another big project that we're always continuously improving. Then a big part of what we do is actually helped by biggest lever. One of the biggest lever is marketing. So we optimize the marketing spend with the budget allocation tool, which is another one of the projects which most e-commerce companies have. Then we have customer relationship management, in which we have analysts working, providing insights on customers, their behavior, and the customer lifetime value. And the last, probably not the least, is optimizing the operations, because it's a very complicated operations by buying something from customer and making sure it reaches in time to the someone who's buying it later. Yeah, so these are some of the few of the use cases I can tell you about, in which we're using the power of data science and making sure that we are able to not just make the company have a sustainable world, but also have a very efficient marketplace and at the same time making money.
So if you tell us a little bit more about projects you're involved in, and for the novices listening, what are what are return on investments, the benefits of doing these? Because we know so many projects can be vanity projects, but not necessarily really getting a core benefit to the end user. Tell us about them.
That's a great question. And actually, if I talk about projects like recommender systems or customer relationship management, they actually work really well when you have a lot of customers and a lot of data to play with. But we wouldn't want to invest too much time and effort into it, because the customers we have at Rebuy are not at the level of what you get at the likes of Amazon or the Zalandos of the world. And so we're not investing too much in that. But at the same time, pricing is something which I would say is the most challenging one. And because we are pricing on both on the selling side and the purchasing side, and that involves a lot of effort, and it's also the biggest lever we have when we're talking about improving the business and improving the customer experience that we are after.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
When you look at actually moving from academia to industry, how did you go about preparing yourself for that? And tell us about the importance of communication and continuous learning.
Yeah, I can tell you about my experience. It was that it was very smooth in a way that I was mainly interested in mathematics. But over the time, I have worked with my academics who have made transition from academia to industry. And I can actually talk about the most important aspect, it's more of you can think of it more as a tips for the people who are trying to move from academia to industry. And the first one is actually motivation, because firstly, you need to be sure that you really want to move to industry. If you can't convince yourself, then you can't convince interviewers. I have interviewed candidates who were just doing it because they heard researchers like them are always desired in industries. Well, skills can be developed on the job, but if you are not motivated, then neither you nor your employer will be satisfied. And then comes the part of technical skills and business acumen. With technical skills, it also depends on what sort of data scientist you want to be, because there's not one skill set that everyone is following. Some people are more focused on data engineering, some people are focused on machine learning, others are mainly focused on the analytics part. But it's always desirable to be a full stack data scientist, but you need to know your strengths and stick with those strengths. And with respect to business acumen, now this is the part which I would say differentiates you, like people coming from academia, from the crowd of data scientists. And for example, if I'm hiring someone from academia, it is much easier for me to train that person on technical skills or project management skills than on business acumen, because that's something which comes from curiosity, experience of working in industry, from general knowledge about the work, talking and learning, human psychology, and business metrics in general. And then you mentioned the communication skills, and that is also where it's very different on how you communicate in academia and in industry. Because in academia, you're mainly talking to people who easily understand what you're talking about. In industry, a lot of times you have to first gauge how much your audience knows and understands, because if you're in a room with 100 people, you don't know how many people know what even supervised learning is. So it's always safe to assume that the other person has the mathematical knowledge of that of a 5-year-old, and then depending on how engaged they are, you can get more technical. And it is and always important to understand that it's not about what you want to say, it's about what your stakeholders want to know in the industry. And then speed matters a lot, because I've had people in my experience, I've had PhDs who start working on a problem, they go into this hibernation, work on the problems, which is usually what they are used to do. They just work on a problem and get the best results. Well, you can't take ages to create the perfect solution, and you need to quickly develop an MVP, showcase what you're doing, and then keep iterating. Agile principles are very important when it comes to working in an industry. If you're going to develop a ship, you need to start with a canoe first. And it isn't about the research or the process, it's about the results. You can use the most advanced technique and create magic, but you need to implement your work and convince internal stakeholders to use it. Usually, I've seen in my experience, a boring and straightforward solution often reaps the best rewards, actually. And that's why I would say these are like summary of what I
Yeah,
think. Yeah.
fantastic piece of advice, because firstly, you need to be enthusiastic, motivated, resilient. You need to
Yeah.
work in an agile process. We've all met those data scientists who PhDs, top of their class. However, their communication skills are weak. They don't want to collaborate. They feel like they're the smartest person in the room. And stakeholders, non-technical, they want it. What's in it for me? What
Mhm.
outcome is going to generate the best?
Yeah.
And having that ability to take that MVP, build momentum, go through to production is one of those ones that you need to start from the bottom and build that buy-in, and then build moss as you go along on that journey. I'm
Yes.
sure you've seen firsthand when it doesn't go to plan.
Yeah, and that's what important to understand, that things definitely don't go according to the plan. And here we are not talking about some research project which you need to work on, and if it doesn't go, you still need to report your failures, because failures is also an important understanding to have. And at the same time, when I say there's the pressure of the time, because you're working in a very cutthroat world, and there's pressure of the investors, pressure of the people who also have the pressure. So you need to make sure that you're delivering, and if not delivering, at least presenting what you've been working on in a way that makes them calm, or makes them believe in what we are doing as a data science team.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Tell me a little bit about interviewing, your
Mhm.
experience, tips, people
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah, so I can tell you about what I personally look for, because I have the years of experience now in interviewing and seeing what differentiates a good data scientist to someone who's okay or someone who's bad. And the first is obviously I ask about the theoretical knowledge without going too deep into how an algorithm works. Because when it looking, we in an industry, we are not looking to build the best models yet. We are always, as I said, agile principles. So you can keep on iterating, and then I talk about the some practical applications of these problems. And by that, let's say how gradient boosted trees work. But what is the objective function you're going to use if you're doing regression of conversion rate in an e-commerce company? And these kind of problems, they only come with experience and of working in data like that. Because you can say that, oh, I'm just going to use some regression function like any normal regression distribution, but that's not the distribution what happen in a conversion rate of an e-commerce company. So these things come with experience and come with your knowledge of how to work with the data and what things matter when you work with a certain kind of data. Then, as I mentioned before, business acumen is very important. I like to solve business problems and then think about, I like to then think about how they approach a problem and create hypotheses. So what I do is, I'll just give you an example. One of my favorite questions to ask is, our company's revenue was constantly decreasing for last 4 years, but since January 2021, it has been constantly, so it was constantly increasing, but since January 2021, it has been constantly decreasing. So how do we find out the cause? And then I sit with that person and we frame the hypothesis together, because that helps understand what is the business acumen, how do they understand the business, how do they understand what things might be going wrong. And then the last one, and then another one is about a project management skills. Here I talk about how they went about some previous projects, the roadblocks they faced, and how they overcame them. And it doesn't have to be something in industry. It's something, could be a research project they worked on in school or in the college. And then the last one is the communication skills, which are very important. And that's what I try to, when they're explaining these things on how they've done in the past, that's where I judge them on how well they're explaining what they've done, because it's already hard for data scientists to describe their jobs. So we need to learn how to sell ourselves to stakeholders, because there are people who are around 50 years old. They don't even know what data science is. So if you go into a room, you need to make them understand that in their own language what we are trying to achieve here. And that's where the communication skills come.
Now, there's a wealth of advice there for anybody listening in. So the importance of understanding the problem that you're working on, being able to actively communicate how you approach the problem, how you added value to the end user, and taking into consideration that the person that you are speaking to is non-technical and they need to be able to get to the answer in a way that makes sense to them, and being very overly communicative in the approach too. You've been listening to the AI in Action podcast series. My name is Mark Kelly, part of our Alldus podcast series, and I've had the pleasure of speaking to Madhav Khurana from rebuy, who's the head of data science. And Madhav has been giving us a little bit of an overview about his journey into data science, how he actually showed persistence along the way to get his first role, talked about the different positions he's held, some of the data science projects at rebuy and how they're looking to add value to their end customer. And we also spoke about advice to people entering the industry, the importance of effective interviewing skills, and how communication and enthusiasm are very important to complement the academic and industry experience. Madhav, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for your time too.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.